Long before streaming and picture-perfect television families, audiences fell in love with a loud, chaotic house called 8 is Enough. Doors slammed, siblings fought, and dinner was pure chaos, but somehow Tom Bradford kept trying to hold the family together. To millions, this family seemed unbreakable, but real life proved otherwise. Behind the smiles lay tragedy, early deaths, secret struggles, serious illness, addiction, and sudden departures that slowly cast a shadow over the show's warm memories. Tonight, the focus shifts back to the Bradford home, not just to remember their legacy, but to understand what time took from them. Tom Bradford was the dad who anchored the show not by being perfect, but by standing tall, even when his world was completely falling apart. Dick Van Patten, born December 9th, 1928, was 48 when the show started in 1977, giving Tom a real, down-to-earth warmth. Tom was stressed, exhausted, hilarious, and constantly dealing with massive crises that no single parent could easily handle. That made him real. He never acted like those clean-cut, flawless television fathers of the past. Instead, he led with patience, humor, and the deep conviction that real love is always messier than absolute control. Van Patten passed away on June 23, 2015, at 86 from diabetes complications, which makes his gentle presence feel even more poignant today. He had actually been acting since he was a kid, later landing memorable roles on The Love Boat, Spaceballs, and several other fan favorite television shows, while dedicating much of his later life to animal rescue and championing quality pet food. Tom Bradford remains unforgettable because Van Patten made fatherhood feel tired, forgiving, and quietly heroic. Joan Bradford was the mother whose sudden absence left a permanent mark on the family, having provided a gentle, loving foundation before tragedy took her away. Diana Hyland, born January 25, 1936, was 41 when the show premiered in 1977, bringing a steady maternal warmth that grounded the early chaos of the household. Joan was soft-spoken, yet she held immense influence by sensing the emotional state of the room before anyone else. She balanced Tom's frantic energy perfectly, serving as the kind of mother who brought instant peace to a frantic house. Hyland passed away on March 27, 1977, at just 41, from breast cancer, forcing the writers to pivot instantly and weave genuine heartbreak into the show. Her death made national headlines, partly because she was dating superstar John Travolta at the time, who was experiencing massive stardom and later accepted her posthumous Emmy for The Boy in the Plastic Bubble. Joan Bradford lingers in TV history because Hyland made maternal love feel fleeting, beautiful, and heartbreakingly real. Mary Bradford was the sister carrying the weight of the family, forced to grow up before ever finding herself. Lanny O'Grady, born October 2nd, 1954, was 22 when the show debuted, giving Mary a sharp, realistic edge. Mary felt like the kid playing grown-up in a house, drowning in demands, making her incredibly relatable to viewers. She was smart, idealistic, deeply conflicted, and torn between chasing her own life and answering the call of family duty. O'Grady died on September 25, 2001, at just 46, casting a shadow over Mary's on-screen struggles. She kept acting and later worked as a talent agent, but she quietly fought personal demons that fans only learned about much later. Her brother, Don Grady of My Three Sons fame, tied her directly to another legendary television dynasty, deepening her family legacy. Mary Bradford remains unforgettable because O'Grady made duty feel heavy, tender, and completely real. Father Robert was the calm presence the family turned to when they needed real wisdom, instead of another argument. Dunn Matheson, born August 5, 1929, was in his late 40s during his appearances on the show, bringing a quiet authority to the role that focused on listening rather than lecturing, calming the storm around him. His presence was vital, offering perspective when heavy grief, guilt, and moral confusion overwhelmed the household, proving humor was always enough to heal them. Matheson made those moments believable because his natural presence felt incredibly grounded. He died June 29, 2014, at 84, following a great career in television and science fiction, notably starring in Land of the Giants. He was never the loudest star on the show, but that was exactly the point. Father Robert remains beloved because Matheson made guidance feel patient, grounded, and entirely trustworthy. Principal Dorsey acts as the stern authority figure, reminding the Bradford kids that growing up extends far beyond their household walls. Born December 4, 1926, Michael Thomas was in his 50s when playing the role, giving Dorsey a firm, realistic edge instead of some cartoon caricature. On 8 is Enough, school represents the outside world, constantly pressing in on the family. It brings rules, expectations, discipline, and very public consequences. Dorsey matters because he makes those heavy pressures feel real. He is not just there to lecture teenagers. Instead, he represents the rigid adult systems kids hit before learning to stand on their own. Thelma died on September 3rd, 1982, at 55 from cancer. This cut short a career of reliable character acting. He also starred in Fame and other TV shows, bringing a serious presence that made minor roles memorable. Principal Dorsey still resonates today because Michael Thelma made authority feel strict, exhausted, and far more human than his students ever realized. Elizabeth Bradford is the quiet younger daughter who refuses to get lost inside a house of much louder siblings. Born December 5, 1959, Connie Needham was 17 when the show started in 1977, giving Elizabeth a sharp, restless energy that perfectly captured a teenager begging to be treated like an actual adult. Elizabeth stands out because she portrays that awkward stage where teenage confidence and deep insecurity constantly clash. She rebels, tests boundaries, and craves her independence, only to find out that true freedom comes with massive consequences. In 2026, Needham is 66, living a much quieter life than her early television fame ever suggested. Though she acted for a while, she eventually stepped away from the spotlight, later surviving a tough battle with ovarian cancer, a struggle that brought her even closer to longtime sitcom fans. Elizabeth Bradford remains memorable because Connie Needham made teenage rebellion feel incredibly raw, vulnerable, and completely authentic. Tommy Bradford represents classic teenage restlessness with a guitar, a kid trying to build an identity out of noise, charm, and attitude. Willie Ames, born July 15, 1960, was 16 when the series launched in 1977, giving Tommy the restless vibe of a kid rushing to grow up without knowing the real cost. Tommy's storylines resonate because they focus on wild impulses, seeking freedom, making mistakes, and chasing cheap thrills, only to realize that family is the safety net you never appreciate until you actually crash. In 2026, Ames turns 66, wrapping up one of the cast's most dramatic off-screen journeys. He eventually starred in Charles in Charge and gained massive fame playing the costumed hero Bibbleman, while also battling severe addiction, total financial ruin, and navigating a highly publicized spiritual recovery. That intense real-life journey makes Tommy's character feel even more relatable today. Tommy Bradford remains iconic because Willie Ames made growing up feel wild, painful, and yet always capable of finding a way back to hope. Senator Ned Atkins represents slick political power, stepping into the family dynamic, proving that authority can flash a smile while completely controlling the room. Dennis Patrick, born March 14, 1918, was 59 during his appearances on the classic show, delivering an old-school charm and sophistication that made his character feel tied to a powerful world outside the chaotic Bradford home. On a family sitcom focused on siblings, bills, and dating drama, a heavy figure like the senator instantly raises the stakes. He shows the audience that these kids are entering a world run by power players, backroom deals, and people who influence lives behind closed doors. Patrick died October 31st, 2002, passing at 84 after decades of working as a beloved, highly recognizable character actor. He popped up in classics like Dark Shadows and Dallas, regularly lending his characters an authoritative edge layered with subtle danger. Senator Atkins remains memorable because Dennis Patrick made elite power feel incredibly polished, calculated, and terrifyingly calm. Nancy Bradford acts as the vital bridge, constantly balancing the wild childhood chaos with heavy adult responsibilities. Diane Kay, born March 29, 1953, was 23 when the sitcom debuted in 1977, giving Nancy a practical, grounded warmth that never felt boring. Nancy is crucial because she keeps the entire family emotionally steady, effortlessly shifting from protective and funny to blunt and nurturing. She constantly acts as the mediator between younger siblings who need direction and older relatives who need a reality check. In 2026, Kay is 73, having carved out a much quieter existence than her initial sitcom success would hint. She took roles in films like 1941 and various TV spots, but eventually walked away from the demanding Hollywood spotlight. That personal choice gives her journey a very grounded feel. Not every child's star needs a massive scandal or comeback to live a fulfilling life. Nancy Bradford remains a fan favorite because Diane Kay made stability feel youthful, kind, and absolutely essential. You and I probably remember David Bradford as the oldest brother who made carrying the family look cool yet exhausting. Grant Goodave, born July 6, 1952, was 24 when 8 is Enough started in 1977. Giving David a genuine vibe that kept the whole Bradford family grounded. David basically functioned like a second parent in that crazy house. He was old enough to feel the pressure, but young enough to crave freedom. That struggle made him real. A dependable guy who still felt the heat. He was decent, but always carrying the heavy weight of everyone else's expectations. In 2026, Goodeve turned 74, keeping his career busy with TV gigs, voiceover roles, hosting, and indie projects. A whole new crowd got to know him on Northwest Backroads, plus major video game and cartoon voiceovers, carving a legacy far beyond one family drama. David Bradford is still remembered because Grant Goodeve made being responsible look good, completely human, and incredibly tough. Johnny Bradford was the gentler, quiet heartbeat among all those noisy siblings. She was the sister whose growing pains hit home because they felt so totally normal. Laurie Walters, born January 8, 1947, was 30 when the show debuted in 1977. Yet she beautifully captured the emotional journey of a girl still trying to find her place. Johnny's character matters because not every kid in a huge family is fighting for the spotlight. Some are defined by minor heartbreaks, first crushes, jealousy, awkward moments, and the dread of being forgotten. Walters nailed those moments naturally, making Johnny feel less written and more like someone we actually knew. In 2026, Walters is 79, and her post-show life took her far away from the Hollywood spotlight. She pivoted to environmental activism and a quiet, meaningful lifestyle, giving her then and now Johnny an incredible sense of dignity. Johnny stays memorable because Laurie Walters made quietness feel unique, showing that sometimes the soft-spoken kids are the ones we hold closest. Abby Bradford was the woman stepping into a grieving home, needing to prove that new love is real without erasing what was lost. Betty Buckley, born July 30th, 1947, was 30 when she joined 8 is Enough for Season 2, giving Abby a complexity that kept the stepmother role from feeling like a cliche. Let's look at why Abby matters. She enters a house shaped by loss, where even kindness can feel like intrusion. Buckley handled that delicate tension beautifully, balancing strength and emotional intelligence to prove that joining an established family takes real guts. In 2026, Buckley turned 79. With a massive career legacy, she became a Broadway queen, winning a Tony for Cats, and starred in hits like Carrie, Tender Mercies, and major TV projects. That legendary stage presence defined Abby. Buckley could easily dominate any room without even trying. Abby remains unforgettable because Betty Buckley made Finding Second Love feel brave, incredibly patient, and strong enough to endure comparisons. The character of Tommy Bradford's girlfriend Red represents those smaller roles that kept this chaotic family grounded in the real world outside their house. Nicole Leach, born September 15, 1970, was just a teenager during her run, blending naturally into late season plots, focusing on high school dating, peer pressure, and all that awkward teenage drama. She wasn't written to dominate the screen, but her role showed how teenagers use first relationships to figure out who they really are. For someone like Tommy, a girlfriend is never just a date. She mirrored his deepest insecurities, his growing confidence, and his rush to grow up way too fast. In 2026, Leach turns 56, having traded the chaotic lifestyle of a child star for a much quieter path. She belonged to a wave of young actors who hit our TV screens and then walked away, choosing not to let early fame define them. Her character remains memorable because those smaller roles proved that teenage life was happening far beyond the Bradford dinner table. Jan Gann MacArthur Bradford was the fresh face stepping into this family, showing everyone how overwhelming love gets when it includes 8 other people. Joan Prather, born October 17, 1950, was in her late 20s when she joined the cast, giving Janet a grounded steadiness that beautifully balanced out all the noise in David's life. Janet was crucial because she gave us an outsider's perspective on the family madness. She wasn't born into their crazy rhythm. She had to learn it, survive it, and decide if love was worth losing or privacy. In 2026, Prather turned 76 and her post-series life has been mostly private. Before we saw her on 8 is Enough, She starred in 1970s classics like The Single Girls, Big Bad Mama, and Smile, and eventually quitting in the late 1980s. She made headlines in 2008 after an arrest, but fans still remember her much more fondly. Janet Bradford stands out because Joan Prather showed that quiet resilience could be its own kind of strength in a loud family. Nicholas Bradford was the little brother who made the show feel real. The kid whose grin could instantly melt a noisy room. Long before anyone realized the crushing pressure that child stardom left behind, Adam Rich, born October 12, 1968, was just 8 when the show launched in 1977, giving Nicholas that perfect blend of mischief, sweetness, and the sharp awareness of a kid who sees absolutely everything. Nicholas was never just some cute background kid. He served as a constant reminder that even in a crowded house, childhood still needed to be protected. Rich passed away on January 7, 2023, at 54, making that early spark feel incredibly fragile. He later worked on Code Red and even voiced Presto in Dungeons & Dragons, yet his adult years were plagued by public battles with addiction, mental health, and the pain of escaping a childhood role etched in America's mind. Nicholas Bradford remains unforgettable because Adam Rich made youth feel bright, fragile, and painfully easy to lose. Susan Bradford represents that middle daughter who made the crowded family dynamic feel incredibly real, constantly fighting to be noticed, but unsure how to speak up. Susan Richardson, born March 11, 1952, was 25 when the show started in 1977, giving the character a girl-next-door warmth that made her daily struggles deeply relatable. Her storylines dove into insecurity, romance, jealousy, and the unique loneliness of being lost in a massive family. While never the loudest sibling, she beautifully showed how each child in that house carried their own quiet hunger for attention, approval, and love. Today, Richardson is 74, and her post-show life turned out far quieter and more challenging than fans ever expected. Shunning the spotlight, she lived quietly and eventually found joy in creative pursuits, like illustrating children's books. That distance leaves a bittersweet legacy. Susan Bradford lives on because Richardson made normal insecurity feel gentle, recognizable, and deeply human. The Bradford home was always buzzing, footsteps echoing, dinner table debates, and laughter spilling from every single room, yet time has a cruel way of silencing even the loudest houses. The stars who once made 8 is enough feel like family are now scattered across history. Some are still here, some left us too early, and others are remembered for their struggles. Perhaps that is why this series still resonates. It was never about showcasing a perfect family. It was about sticking together while the world kept spinning. For anyone missing that crowded house, stay tuned to Rewind 1960s for more stories about the legends who made television feel like home.